Everyone wants to be taken seriously. That's the default setting for ambitious people. Build a reputation, protect it, make sure nobody laughs at you, because the moment people start laughing, you think the power is gone. Snoop Dogg looked at that logic and did the exact opposite. He became one of the most memed humans on the internet. He did cooking shows with grandmothers. He narrated nature documentaries in character. He showed up at the Paris Olympics holding a torch like he'd been preparing for that specific moment his entire life. And while everyone was laughing, he was building. Because here's what almost nobody understood in real time. Snoop wasn't losing control of his image. He was engineering it. Every meme, every random appearance, every "wait, why is Snoop there" moment was quietly expanding his brand into demographics, platforms, and business sectors that most rappers from his era never touched. By the time people started paying attention to what he'd actually built, it was already done. This is the story of how Snoop Dogg turned being a meme into a media empire, and more importantly, why it worked when it should have destroyed him. Let's establish where Snoop started, because the distance between that point and where he ended up is the whole story. Long Beach, California. He gets introduced to the world through Dr. Dre's The Chronic and immediately sounds like someone who has never been stressed about anything in his life. The flow is effortless. The persona is fully formed at 20 years old. Doggy Style drops in 1993 and sells 800,000 copies in its first week, a record at the time. Then things get complicated fast. He's on Death Row Records, run by Suge Knight, in the middle of the most dangerous beef in music history. Criminal charges, real threats, an environment that people who survived it describe as genuinely frightening. He gets through it, leaves Death Row in 1998, stays relevant through the 2000s, and here's where the conventional story ends for most artists. You peak in your mid-20s, spend the next 3 decades playing those same songs at festivals, and eventually become a nostalgia act. That's the normal trajectory. Snoop looked at that trajectory and quietly decided he wasn't interested. Keep that Death Row detail in mind. We're coming back to it. Here's where things get strategically interesting. Most rappers have a persona that only functions in its original context. Put them in a rap video. It works. Put them next to a Connecticut grandmother teaching them how to fold napkins. It falls apart completely. Snoop's persona was different, and this is the foundational thing that made everything else possible. Calm, dry, slightly above whatever is happening around him, mildly amused by everything. The voice alone communicates a specific energy, unbothered, confident, never trying too hard. That energy is transferable, context independent. You drop it into almost any situation and it functions. Put it in a rap video, works. Cooking show, works. Nature documentary, works. Olympics broadcast, works. This sounds simple. It is extremely rare. Most celebrities can only exist in the context their fame was built in. Snoop could exist anywhere, and the persona would remain intact. That's not a personality quirk. That's a deployable asset. The question was whether he understood it well enough to deploy it deliberately. Turns out he did. The weirdest partnership of his career may have been the smartest. On the surface, the Snoop and Martha Stewart friendship reads as a random cultural joke. Gangsta rapper from Long Beach, Connecticut lifestyle brand built around home cooking and elegant entertaining. The contrast is so extreme, it's almost satirical. But here's what was actually happening underneath the punchline. Martha Stewart, in the mid-2000s, was a brand in recovery. She had served prison time for insider trading. Her image needed warmth, needed currency, needed something that made her feel current and human again. Snoop needed demographic expansion. His core audience was aging. He needed to reach households that had never been Snoop Dogg territory. Suburban living rooms, daytime television, older women, people who'd never once pressed play on Doggy Style. Their collaboration on Martha and Snoop's potluck dinner party wasn't a comedy bit. It was a bilateral brand transaction. Martha got cool. Snoop got mainstream household legitimacy. The show ran for 2 seasons on VH1, pulled in millions of viewers per episode and received Emmy nominations. People who had never listened to a Snoop Dogg song were now watching him weekly in their living rooms and finding him charming. That's a demographic acquisition, and it cost him nothing except his willingness to be in the room. But here's where most people misread the move. They thought it was about the show. It wasn't about the show. The show was just proof of concept. What he was actually testing was, how far can this persona travel before it stops working? Martha Stewart was the first real answer. The answer was further than anyone expected. Then the internet changed everything, and Snoop changed with it faster than almost anyone noticed. Between 2013 and 2016, meme culture explodes. Snoop becomes one of the most memeable figures online, the smoke jokes, the impossibly calm reactions to chaotic situations, the voice notes, the random appearances in places that made no logical sense. Here's where most celebrities make a critical mistake. They try to control it. PR teams, reputation management, carefully worded statements trying to redirect the narrative. Snoop leaned in completely. And by doing that, he accomplished something that most legacy artists have never managed. He made himself native to the internet, not a legend being discussed on the internet, actually native, generating new cultural moments in real time that spread organically to audiences who had no prior relationship with his music. Now think about the economics of that for a second. A brand trying to reach 22-year-olds in 2015 would spend millions on digital advertising and influencer campaigns to get the kind of cultural penetration Snoop was getting for free every time he posted a video or appeared somewhere unexpected. But here's the part that really matters. Reach by itself is worthless. Reach only converts into money if you build the right infrastructure behind it. Snoop was building it, and then he made the move that made everything else make sense. February 2022, Snoop Dogg acquires Death Row Records. Take a second to understand what that actually means. Death Row is the label that signed him at 20, the environment where his career was built and nearly destroyed. Suge Knight, the founder, was by most accounts a genuinely threatening figure who maintained control through fear and financial leverage. Artists left with nothing. Some didn't leave at all. Snoop escaped in 1998. He described the experience publicly as something he needed to recover from. 24 years later, he bought it for a price that made industry heads raise an eyebrow. What did he get? The Death Row catalog, Doggy Style, Dr. Dre's The Chronic, Tupac's All Eyes on Me. Some of the most culturally significant music ever recorded, now owned by the man who was once a controlled asset inside that same system. And then, this is the move most coverage missed. He announced Death Row would operate as the first major NFT record label, releasing exclusive music and content directly to fans, testing distribution models that cut out traditional intermediaries entirely. The NFT market has had its turbulence, but the underlying logic was sound. He didn't buy a legacy asset to let it sit. He bought it to rebuild it as a forward-facing media company. Owning your catalog in the music industry means you collect every dollar it generates, forever. You control who licenses it, when, and at what price. Most artists from Snoop's generation don't own their masters. They sign them away in deals they didn't fully understand when they were young and desperate. Snoop doesn't just own his masters. He owns the label that originally held them. He bought back his own origin story and turned it into infrastructure. Here's a thread that looks casual from the outside and is anything but. Snoop's association with cannabis is so built into the brand, it barely registers as a business decision. It's just part of the character, which is exactly why most people miss the actual play. In 2015, he co-founded Leafs by Snoop, one of the first major celebrity cannabis brands to launch as legal markets opened in Colorado and other states. Not a licensing deal where he rented his name. Actual equity, actual involvement in product development and brand architecture. Then there's Casa Verde Capital, a venture fund he co-founded focused on the cannabis industry ecosystem, not just the plant, the infrastructure around it. technology platforms, retail systems, delivery logistics, ancillary services. The picks and shovels approach applied to an emerging legal market. The cannabis industry in the United States is projected by multiple analysts to exceed $30 billion in annual sales within this decade. Snoop planted his flag inside that industry when most institutional investors were still treating it as legally and reputationally risky. Think about the conversion logic here. He had the most famous cannabis association in the world. He had the audience. He had the cultural credibility. He had 30 years of brand equity built around this exact lifestyle. He turned all of that into equity in the actual industry. That's called converting a personal brand attribute into an investment thesis. Most people with that kind of cultural association collect a check for putting their name on something. Snoop built ownership. Now we return to where we started, Paris, August 2024, the moment that crystallized 30 years of brand building into a single 3-week demonstration. NBC hired Snoop as a special correspondent for the Paris Olympics. On paper, it sounds like a fun novelty, something for the highlights reel. In practice, it became one of the most talked about elements of the entire broadcast. His reactions to events he had zero prior context for, gymnastics, swimming, equestrian, race walking, generated hundreds of millions of views across social platforms. He was genuinely curious, genuinely funny, and completely himself in every single clip. But here's what was actually happening beyond the entertainment value. NBC had a problem they'd been trying to solve for years. How do you make a traditional linear broadcast feel culturally alive to audiences under 35 who don't watch television the way their parents did? Younger audiences weren't just watching less Olympics, they were watching less of everything on traditional broadcast. Snoop solved that problem organically, without a script, by being exactly what he'd spent 30 years building himself into, a persona so watchable and so transferable that it functions in any context. The clips spread without ad budgets. The moments became memes before the events were even finished. A 52-year-old man at his 5th decade of fame was generating the most shared content of an entire global sporting event. Every brand watching that had the same thought, we need access to that, and Snoop had spent 30 years making sure access to that came through him. Let's be direct about something. Snoop is not the most technically skilled rapper who ever lived. There are artists from his era with more critical acclaim, more respected discographies, more industry awards. Almost none of them built what he built. The reason comes down to one specific mental model. Snoop understood early that the career and the brand are two completely different assets, and that the brand has a dramatically longer runway than the career. Your career as a rapper depends on making music people want to listen to right now. That window is roughly 10 to 15 years at genuine peak for most artists. Your brand, if you construct it correctly, has no expiration date. It becomes a media property. It generates revenue through licensing, equity, appearances, partnerships, and platform deals that have nothing to do with whether your last album charted. Snoop started transitioning from career to brand in the mid-2000s. He never stopped making music, but music stopped being the primary engine of his economic power. Most artists never make this transition because it requires something psychologically difficult. You have to be willing to be laughed at. You have to exist in contexts that feel beneath the prestige of your original art form. You have to prioritize, reach over respect from your core audience. That's hard for people who built their entire identity around being taken seriously in a specific world. Snoop either didn't have that ego rigidity, or he deliberately dismantled it. Either way, the result is the same. Step back and look at the full arc, and one clear pattern emerges across every major move. Find a new audience that doesn't know me yet, give them a version of me they can connect with, build a business inside that connection. Martha Stewart, suburban households, daytime television, demographics that music never reached, meme culture, Gen Z, internet natives, audiences who weren't alive for Doggy Style. Cannabis industry. an entire emerging legal market where his cultural credibility was worth more than any other investor's capital. Death row acquisition, ownership of the catalog that defined the genre that made him famous, Paris Olympics, sports audiences, international viewers, the biggest broadcast stage on Earth. Each expansion added a new layer. Each layer added new reach. Each new reach opened new monetization. And critically, none of it required his last album to be good. This is what media empires actually look like when they're being assembled in real time. Not one dramatic moment, a series of deliberate expansions, each one looking slightly random from the outside until you see the pattern underneath. Here's the thing about Snoop's strategy that almost no analysis mentions directly. He made the work look effortless, and that effortlessness was itself the strategy. When something looks effortless, people don't analyze it. They enjoy it. They share it. They don't ask what it's really doing because it doesn't feel like it's doing anything. It just feels like Snoop being Snoop. But every major move had precise logic behind it. Every partnership solved a specific problem. Every cultural moment expanded specific territory. The unbothered energy was the packaging. The business architecture was the product inside. That gap between how something appears and what it's actually executing is where most of Snoop's real power lives. He built a multi-platform media infrastructure while the entire internet was busy thinking he was just vibing. Here's everything compressed. Snoop built his career inside one of the most dangerous environments in music history and walked out of it intact. He identified early that his persona was context-independent, deployable anywhere, in any room, against any backdrop. He used Martha Stewart to capture suburban demographics his music could never reach. He leaned into meme culture instead of fighting it and became native to the internet, generating organic reach that money couldn't buy. He converted his most famous personal attribute into actual equity in a $30 billion industry. He bought Death Row Records, the label that built and nearly destroyed him, and turned it into a forward-facing media company. He demonstrated at the 2024 Paris Olympics that his cultural relevance hadn't declined in 30 years. He separated his brand from his career early enough to build the brand into something no single record could ever become. And he executed all of it while looking like he wasn't trying at all, which meant nobody studied the moves while they were happening. The thing to understand about Snoop Dogg is that he solved the right problem. Most famous people ask, "How do I stay famous?" Snoop asked, "How do I stay valuable?" Valuable to brands, valuable to networks, valuable to industries he'd never been in, valuable to audiences that didn't look anything like his original ones. He answered that question repeatedly across 30 years, through cooking shows and meme culture and venture funds and catalog acquisitions, always with the same energy, calm, unhurried, like none of it was particularly difficult. That was the disguise. Most people use fame to make money. Snoop used fame to become infrastructure. If you want more breakdowns of the real strategies behind modern empires, subscribe because there are a lot more of them.